I'm Mr. James.
And I'm Mr. Ritchie.
And we are the
Educators.
Season 3, Episode 3. The date is 9/11/2020. Of course,
It's a heavy date.
Heavy date for us. It is a Friday. It is the last day before we step into school again with students. So this is a stress test, basically.
Some of you might already have been in school or have kids that have gone to school or are in school. But yeah, it's an interesting time. So we're going to figure out what it's like as hundreds of children come into our school. And we do our very, very best to educate them and give them the best education we can. But yeah, so today is 9/11. So, it's a heavy day. But it's also our Thursday, so we've got to keep this train rolling. But we did want to mention that we know that it's a heavy day. We give our condolences to those that were lost on that day and from the effects of that day. And
I'm
it's
sure
still
people
ongoing.
still feel that. Yeah, people probably still feel that.
I was listening to some interviews at the site of Ground Zero today. And listening, it's still very alive and well, unfortunately, in the minds of a lot of people, especially those who lived in New York at the time. And we all have our individual story of that day, which is pretty interesting because, like, for people of our generation, at least, that's kind of like a marker. Like, hey, where were you during that day, that 9/11? And like, our students are all going to have the pandemic as their marker, at least for this part, and going forward in their lives, it's going to be, hey, what were you doing? What was your situation during the pandemic? And what did you do to adapt? And so we're going to talk about that a little bit in just a minute. But I did want to mention also that right now in the news, wildfires in Oregon, enormous.
Yeah, that's...
they are sweeping, they're encroaching upon the Seattle suburbs, and it's worst case scenario right now. There's all kinds of footage coming out of that area, so my heart goes out to those people in Oregon as well, and not helping it. The first time I've ever heard of this in the news, like that there are fake rumors being spread about who started it, where the fire is, what the proper evacuation situation is. And I've never heard of this before, but it was a report on the way home. One of the commentators asked one of the firefighters that was there, saying, have you heard of these rumors? And they're like, yes, and we're doing our best to combat them and lead people to safety, and they're not obviously helping.
This is not like another country, like, once again hacking in like they've done with elections. They're like, basically, most countries now that have a similar power to what America has is probably saying, maybe some of them are thinking America is on a low and we can even get them lower. We can kick them while they're down. We might as well just fill them full of all these things and, let them fall and see what happens. And basically be, because what United States is considered one of the greatest world power or something like that. So I don't think so, but we're definitely not going to, if we're not going to get through all of these things going on right now. There's another hurricane coming too.
Oh, is there? I haven't heard about that either. We'll have to talk about that.
So many things.
My gosh. Yeah. No, that's unfortunate. But so we are still, even with all these crazy stories, we're going to talk about a few more. We are still in the middle of this pandemic. Yeah. And so we do talk about the stats ongoing each week. Unfortunately, I think every episode so far.
That's where this came from. Born of the COVID.
Yeah. And so out in the world, so the weekly increase, so these are just new cases that have happened in the last week, 1.8 million, which is higher. Well, so it's 1.88 million actually, versus last week was 1.80. So it is higher worldwide, unfortunately. First week for for the virus worldwide. In the U.S., weekly increase was 242,315. Last week was 281,000. So actually lower this week, but let's not get our hopes up too much. Here in Maine, weekly increase 143 new cases over 178 last week. We are at least finally not hearing so many new cases as a result from that one wedding. But we did hear of 3 over the last week, so 3 new cases, but they were all at, unfortunately, the elderly assisted living facility up there. So, and the new advice coming down from the chief virologist in the country is that we're not around the bend yet, and we need to hunker down through fall and winter. We need to still keep up our guard as much as possible through fall and winter. That's gonna be one of our best methods, because
the flu. I mean, I see
cold and flu
signs
season.
Signs are up now. Free flu shot. Tiny print underneath with some insurances. With most insurances.
Yeah.
Some insurances won't work, but yeah, that's that whole. You know, they're trying to sell this thing, but people looking flu. Seriously, we all have masks on. I'm worried about the flu. I'm worried about the flu, and there's this thing that we're going to talk about later about what COVID can do if you're an athlete and stuff like that. Like, there's so many things, and Windows.
I have to mention, we still got to get our flu shots. We still got to keep the flu down, because it's definitely something that
we're just hoping
we don't want to get.
This one that they have now is going to fit with the strain this year, basically.
Yeah, and so I just can't imagine being the researchers during this last run-up to the release of this vaccine that are doing the math and trying to figure out what's the worst flu strain while there's this worse thing happening all around them. You know, like, that must be such a tough thing. Like, the data that you have to process in order to figure out what vaccine is the right one, that's a lot of information to sift through, and I just can't imagine the junk information coming in just because you don't know if they've, you know, what the situation is where the testing's been.
I know, and I don't know if they're gonna. I mean, are both vaccines gonna work with each other? I mean, that's the thing. Are they gonna eventually roll something out where here's the COVID vaccine we finally have with the flu vaccine?
Yeah, there's all these trials.
Yeah,
all these trials that need to happen before it should be released to the public. The same diligence that we've always had. I mean, I trust the vaccine schedule that's out right now. We've trusted our daughter to it. We've all done it here. But I want the same rigor of science done to this vaccine, and I'll probably even after that give it a full year or 2, probably before I take it, just because I'm very cautious about what goes in my body. And like, I know some people might even take offense to that, but I'm a very science-oriented person. I know that there's a lot of information in it, but it's just a personal decision at that point, you know, whether or not I'd take it, because I want to see what its effects through time are. And I don't think that anybody can fault me for that. But
it's going to be, I don't know, this, when windows, like I was mentioning earlier, when the doors and the windows close and you're not going to keep them open daily to sort of air things out, and you're relying on fans or anything or any sort of machine that promises to clean air or put whatever in the air, humidity or ionization, whatever, that's when problems happen. Because honestly, a lot of those things are sold basically on a whim. These companies promise all these things. They put flashy whatever. They market it however way they can, lying, and you get something that basically you're plugging in a low quality toaster that makes a fan sound. So you brought the world in.
That's right. I got to bring the world into focus. No, I agree. And that's why I'm really, honestly, very hopeful for things like ionization. There's all kinds of new ionization devices coming out. They're installing them at the schools nearby. You know, I feel like that's a very simple solution to a big problem. And I hope that, like, there's a lot more research that goes into how to keep the air clean simply. Oh, we can pass an electric field through it? Well, if you regulate it at the right frequency and the right amperage.
And then the largeness, I mean, like, thinking how large the size of this thing, I mean, I have a dehumidifier that
Mm-hmm.
I looking online and not really taking the measurements and saying, well, this is going to be good. And they said, yeah, this is the mid-range one. If you want the big one, it's 70 pints per hour that you
Yeah.
take out. And you get it and you go, this thing is not that big. And it does pull water out of the air, but it is not that big. Now,
But it can't store it.
Ionization,
Yeah.
how big of this machine and how much reach is this thing going to have? Because if you have to pull some sort of air in and it has to pass through this machine, you want something as, you know, one of these large fans that you see on the side of like farmhouses and stuff like that blow this air out, the exhaust. So it's just like,
there's a lot of extra background research that it's got to go into all these decisions, and the devices on Amazon sort of prey upon those people that are looking for quick fix, you know, and you know, a simple lighter or little tabletop thing is not going to do that.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to our next section, science in the news. Hopefully this is a little bit less depressing.
Yeah, it should be. Let's see. What's the first one?
Yeah,
no.
Okay. No.
All right.
So first one, and I got this from sciencenews.org. It seems I'm going to that one quite a bit. I'm going to start going around different things. I like NPR as well. College athletes show signs of heart injury after COVID-19.
Did we talk about this one yet?
We talked about this, before that they said there was going to be something.
Yeah.
I think it might have been, I don't know if it was heart or something.
Heart
was related
injury.
To lungs. Yeah.
Heart injury,
So
which is
injury, meaning, and how delicate is the heart? Can it be repaired after this? Is it?
Right. You know, we're going to be talking about this for decades because it's going to be, you know, I mean, a guy like us, so like, you know, 10 years in the future, we're 50 and we die all of a sudden. People are going to be like, was it COVID?
Yeah.
He was young. He was so young. Like, you know, oh, he had heart failure. Oh, well, you know, what's unfortunate is that in America, it's kind of like a big, you know, it's almost, the irony of this is almost too much, but like heart disease, you know, leading cause of death in America.
Yeah. And the
American
diet is so bad that it
and so it's going to be this, like, all of a sudden, all of these people are going to be more susceptible to the damaging things of the diet and, you know, just
it's like 30 years from now, they're going to have better data on all of the stuff that related to this.
Yeah,
it's going to be another factor they put into their calculations. Well, bad diet, a lot of cholesterol, this or that.
COVID.
No, you had COVID, so that was enough. That really didn't help. And but it's like 30 years from now, they're going to know so much more about all of that. And in the meantime, it's kind of like this big petri dish and just keep testing everybody. I mean, we're always everyone's always running tests and trying to figure out what's going on. And that's great. That's our world and stuff like that. And we're hoping AI at some point, artificial intelligence, will help us with that and help we get some answers and maybe some foresight into what the future could be through some, you know, fancy algorithms and such. But I just feel like this is just going to be one of those things where I'd be so bad for somebody who is an athlete and wants to go on to play a professional sport or whatever. Yeah. And they're like, well, but you had COVID-19, so, you know, your heart's probably not good enough for that. So I don't think we're going to draft you into this professional league or whatever.
Right. Or it's a liability.
Yeah.
Or it's a liability. We can't draft you in the league because you got COVID-19, and that means that you might have a heart attack on the field, and we can't take that liability because
you're not
it'll make us look bad.
$17 million. We want to pay you.
Oh man, and it could absolutely do that. It is so interesting, man. We were just talking off camera that like this is kind of going to be a journal for us to look back on, you know, in the future, and these things are real things that are going to happen, you know, in the next few years and into the future. That like I wish that we had that lens forward to see what it looked like, because what if like they stop offering certain athletes so much money because they've had a registered COVID positive test?
Yeah.
What an interesting thing.
Oh, but, man, yeah.
Let's move off.
About previous. Do you have a previous ailment? Previous condition? Yeah. We don't talk about that.
Right. It's pre-existing conditions. You know, that's one of the reasons why we've got to like strike that right out of the whole healthcare industry, and it's just something else for another time. We can dive deeper into the healthcare industry sometime, and that would be a good dive. But let's talk about something a little bit more positive, maybe some nature things.
This is actually interesting because this goes along with what we talked about transhumanism. Notice I don't have a transhumanist shirt on. I probably should get one eventually.
Right.
And this, just for the fact that there's such thing as the cryogenic freezing, and we talked about this. And a hummingbird survives cold nights by almost freezing itself solid. So it found a way, for some reason, it can completely inanimate itself for the most part and survive these incredibly cold nights that would normally kill it.
Wow.
And then basically come back unscathed and back to normal, which is basically what humans want to have the ability to do.
No, yeah. Well, so I haven't heard of that. So with freezing, there's there's two things that I wonder. There's two avenues. One is that the blood or this intracellular fluid doesn't actually freeze.
Doesn't crystallize, because then it can expand. Yeah.
Exactly. Or the cell structure is strong enough to withstand, or there's other mechanisms at play to like relieve that pressure or survive at least that horrible, some things will survive super cold, but shed that as like scar tissue or something,
Be
later
like
on.
an antifreeze that it runs in. And they did this before,
right? So
with some other things that they did that.
Like fish, like certain fish, and so the famous experiment where they took a tomato and they said, how can we transport these farther and reach a wider market? And so what they did is they grafted like the gene out of a certain fish that prevents it from freezing, grafted it into the tomato's genes, and created a tomato that doesn't freeze. Now that tomato is not on the market. There's no genetically modified tomatoes on the market currently, but it's certainly a promising product for certain large-scale producers that need to reach a wider audience, and so it's something on the horizon, and I think that's pretty interesting. So,
and that's why they can still have Italian sandwiches in Antarctica, because
right, that's right.
These tomatoes, he goes, they were outside and they're not freezing at all. My guy's like, wow, science did that for you.
In my research for my thesis paper in college, there is a greenhouse sometimes, a greenhouse that's run in Antarctica. It's by like just these really super focused gardeners that have the spare time in Antarctica and try to keep this garden alive. And it's one of the most difficult things. It's basically a garden on Mars, and it's something worth looking into if you guys want to look that up.
Yeah.
But you did mention something else here about some plants.
Yes, the parasitic plants. There's a parasitic plant that eavesdrop. So basically, it knows when another plant, its host, is going to flower, so that it flowers first, getting the nutrients, and basically,
That is interesting. The whole using chemicals as a communication method is totally just intriguing to me. Ants do it, and some creatures do it, but a lot of plants do it as well. Like trees can relay information, and that's pretty interesting. Like knowing when to flower so you can beat them to the punch.
And it just tells me, like, at all levels, same thing with bacteria and viruses and such like that. Everything is competing to live. Everything is competing to live. We're competing to live. We're competing to survive. We're doing it in these norms and in a very civilized way. Most of us are, but we're still competing to survive.
But we humans are the first species to overcome survival of the fittest and intentionally help those who are
not the fittest.
are not the fittest. Yeah, and when you ask, what is the earliest sign of civilization in man? Some people go to tools, but there's some people that go to when we started healing other people. Like I think the first sign of civilization was when was a broken bone that had been refused because it meant that that somebody was taking care of someone else long enough for a bone to heal, which is a very significant thing in nature. So,
Yep.
There's that.
And that it's just that one of those things. It's nice to know that how things. It literally is that. I mean, you can look at it all scales, and I think it helps you live a different way, understanding that.
Absolutely.
Maybe if it's more compassion, or it's more realizing, wow, this is serious. Maybe the idea that I'm upset about some social thing in my life, it's not as important as the fact that outside, nature is trying to survive, and things are fighting, trying to kill a tree in your yards, fighting to have more space that it can take up, so it can, everything's fighting for space and resources, basically.
We have to.
It's just crazy stuff. Another interesting thing is a moth they have tricked into liking pollution altered aromas. So
interesting.
A moth that can survive where there is pollution, but so that it's attracted to that. And I know they've gotten
interesting
bacteria attracted to eating certain things that we would consider pollution and such.
I'm interested in that. I'm interested in that part. So I'm curious if the moth consumes the pollution in some way and helps with the pollution, because that's what the bacteria is usually generated for, like to eat plastic. That's, if you could find a bacteria that would eat HDPE, which is like your average milk jug, or PETG, which is your average soda bottle, if you could develop something to do that, you'd become very wealthy for a number of reasons, and most of them are positive and forward-thinking. But just imagine having like this bacteria that eats plastic, and no longer, like, your plastic, it spreads across the world, and no longer your plastic is safe. Like, because all of a sudden you go to grab this bottle out of the fridge, and it's just,
hospitals that need plastic, all those things.
God,
you see that, and it's like, IV, where'd the IV go? The bacteria got to it.
So I'm curious about that, if the moth actually does something, or if it's just drawn to it. But
so there's something else I heard in the news that I think you can talk us about dark matter, which is really interesting.
Oh yeah, so something super interesting that I just read today was that so cosmologists and astronomers, they know that in between galaxies is this dark matter that that is kind of the glue holding everything together. There's more dark matter than actual matter, which we can see and interact with. So which is interesting for a lot of reasons. But so we've always theorized, of course, that dark matter is everywhere around us, but the evidence of that has been very hard to find. And one thing that was just discovered is they found a clump of dark matter. As of right now, we're going to keep studying this region of space and learn more about it. That's part of science, but for right now, it really looks like there is a section of space where there is some dark matter that is in a size that we thought would bend light. So gravity on a large scale, with E equals mc squared, says that, like, you can bend space-time, basically. So and when you bend space-time, the light curves as well. So in this galaxy, we found that there's this chunk of matter that looks to be dark matter, that is bending light. And so there is now evidence that there are these small chunks intragalactal
that's the best way to say
intragalactal dark matter. And so it's just evidence for a theory that we already knew, but it is a big step. It's just part of the slow process of science. You get these little chunks, and you got to get excited about those small chunks. Otherwise,
it's something, and it can promote searching for something else, and maybe hopefully students in college or whatever, grad students, will be like, hey, I want to study that area. Great, we need you, and in 40 years you can really inform us on what you're looking into. because it takes
Absolutely.
that long. And hopefully people live forever. But on to one of our big subjects today. So we are talking about the stress about going back to school. It is approaching. We literally have a weekend, and then we're back. Full students, full on. All this prep, does it work? What's going on? And one of the big things I'm going to start with, you can help us with technology.
Oh man. So I got to say that I didn't even put this on the agenda really, but like I got to say, first off, I am just in awe that we have the capacity to process the amount of information that is being developed currently.
Yeah.
Every teacher is making a Google Classroom, is making like, you know, a Seesaw. We're all making so much data suddenly. Like what an influence. And I can't believe that everything's holding up. And I wonder, and I hope to talk about this some other podcast, but like a memory crunch where we actually get to the limits of you know, we got too much stuff, we can't remember it all. And we had talked for a second earlier today about how there are like these scientific journals that are disappearing because they're just expiring, or in like memories running out. And it's just a crazy thing to think about. But on top of that, the technology within a school, I really want to know if the internet's going to be there tomorrow, or you know, on, you know, Monday. Like, it's not necessarily our building's fault, but I mean, the provider in our area, for those of you in Maine, will know my pain. But Spectrum, listen, like if you end up, if an employee of Spectrum hears this and wants to talk, I'd love to talk. But like, I'm sorry, sometimes your connection is spotty, and that's at home, that's at work, stuff happens. I hope that my presentations, you know, are there and uploaded so that I can deliver them to my students. So I'm not going around to like go drive down to Walmart to get their Wi-Fi to download a, you know, a document so I can go back to work, you know. But I might have to do that because I'm really worried about internet connectivity. And you know, just like the memory crunch, a bandwidth crunch, we're going to run into issues where we're, you know, too many teachers, 30 teachers running a video at the same time. Do we have the hardware to keep up with that? And
oh man, that's why I'm probably gonna download my videos and have them ready to go and play them off of a USB drive.
That is for those of you that watched our you know, how to remote learn, right there, that is an excellent tip. That download the videos, do everything you can, keep it local as much as possible. Oop, don't mind my lighting here. I have a light that's falling off the table. There we go.
I've got a new light right now, which is great.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. I'm jealous.
It's not the ring light though.
Oh no way!
It's actually another lamp.
No way! Nice, excellent. Yeah, I gotta figure that out at work as well. So another thing we talked about was lighting in your videos as an educator, which you gotta worry about. But so I know that with technology right now in schools, there's a lot of it. And a lot of people are really feeling this weight of just too many resources coming in. And at first I did too, but then, you know, one of the things that I usually like to talk about with people that I think is an incredible processing method is the gift of sift. Sifting through junk to find the information that you need. And with the abundance of links that I'm getting, if I've never heard of the resource, if I don't trust the resource, it's gone. It's out of my life, whatever. I've got more than enough resources backed up for years. I can do this. You know, that's just part about being you just gather resources for years, and you know what? We're going to sift through it. So if you have an inbox that's just getting stacked on stack, you know, of just junk email, develop a system, find a way to sift through the information, and eventually you might reach a point where you get the gift of sift, where you can just sort of like, you know what, I know it's junk already. I can almost see the subject line of an email, who sent it, think about it for a second, be like, you know what, I can.
I think you change. You might people sign up for things and then change priorities and be like,
Yeah.
Wow, am I interested in that anymore? No, I'm changing my priorities, and I don't want to see this
Absolutely.
again. I don't want to be reminded of it.
I did.
Unsubscribe, have Google automatically get rid of it as it comes to you, and
Yeah.
there you go.
Use the tools available to you. The Google offers a lot of tools, and one of them is just uh, not even Google provided, but like the law is that on all these subscribing things or these weird, marketing emails, is somewhere there should be an unsubscribe button
Yeah.
by law. And so you go down, you find it, you click it. They're supposed to make it very seamless, very intuitive. Otherwise, if someone throws a lawsuit at them, that it'd be easy to prove. Yeah, they made it difficult for me to unsubscribe, all that.
Yeah.
But like, get rid of all those junk marketing emails. Right now, teachers are getting swamped with all of these ads for like buy PPE, all this stuff. You're not the decision maker for the school. The school's making the PPE decisions. Let them deal with that crap. Sift that stuff out. Get rid of it. And yeah, you've got enough stuff in front of you, enough stuff in the way. Do not worry about marketing right now. Get rid of it all.
Yeah.
Unless you're in need of something. Like if at this point you haven't gotten your mask situation sorted out,
Go to a store and buy it right now. You can't get online because they're not
you just
shipping it.
gotta go. Yeah, get what you can. Yeah, but there's a lot of people like us that grew up with technology. In fact, like you've done more with technology than I have. You've built computers and things. I've built a computer, at one point.
Yeah.
But like people like us that at least are comfortable with basic technology like email, Google
Yeah.
Suite, and the Microsoft Suite. It's a little bit easier for us. Today, I helped someone figure out how to forward an email, and I was just, I'm like, at this stage of the game, I really hope, I wish you well, and they have a great team of people in that grade, and it's just sort of like, at this point, it's an uphill battle for you, and I'm sorry, but
and I wonder about the stress points, and I would say it as that in the school for those that we're kind of holding out on this technology, or I just don't know how to properly do it, and they might have done some of the training with help as a team. I might have worked on it. Oh, what's the answer for this? Because I know a lot of the grade teams work together.
Right.
But they
Right.
never,
and that's awesome.
individually did not take anything away from it, so that when they have to do some of these things, they can't, and how this might inhibit other teachers or UA teachers when they're in the school, because maybe someone's Google Classroom wasn't up to date and something wasn't done right, or the seesaw wasn't done right, or something like that. And I'm just wondering how that might be sort of a stress point in the school where it affects everything. So maybe one person could even make a mistake that could butterfly out and affect everyone.
Yeah, right.
And that's what I'm worried. That's what I'm worried about. As much as we can be diligent, if it can be taken down by someone's negligence or a doc that's shared as everyone editing, and everyone edits it to be completely destroyed. Yeah.
There's a lot of room for error right now, and it is daunting, and I know that those who make it through this year and keep their head clear, get through it. We know that this is a tough time. We've known this tough time was coming.
Yeah.
We've had time to prepare. And if we're running into this blind, and right now we're like, oh, I never saw this coming. Where were you? At this point, you got to be aware of your surroundings. You got to have some situational awareness in this industry, career path, I guess. But so yeah, there are those that are going to adapt faster, and those are going to be stuck in the past. And in the general game of life, those who adapt faster do better, and that's something that's shown often in nature, and that's just something that's going to be an overarching truth throughout all of this.
And teaching hasn't changed. That's the biggest thing. It hasn't changed. Yeah. Students still need your social, emotional help. And in transition into our next topic, which I'm going to be basically the same sort of thing, I'm talking about the more psychological aspect, the social emotional climate. that you as a teacher can produce for them. They're still going to need that. And that is actually more important than your curriculum, than anything you teach them, is the fact that you're an adult and you're there talking to these students and being not only a role model, but you're being like a model of how somebody can be surviving in all of this. You know, you're not just the person they look to for, I'm interested in these subjects you teach, or I'm interested in, you know, how you go about your day, but like, how are you surviving? How are you managing this? And I think being transparent and open about how you're doing this is going to be beneficial for students to hear that, because they've only heard it from their parents or guardians.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where let's hear how these smart adults that have to go to school for a long time to become teachers, and maybe students don't know that. I think it's another thing we could be sharing with students. Like, guess what? Being a teacher is not just, I go to school and I get out and I can do this. It's lots of tests. It's lots of, you know, trying to get a job is not that easy. And it's you know, it's very stressful, and the paperwork and the constant learning, and yeah, for a lot of people, they can't manage that. But the social emotional climate, I think, is one of the first things anybody going into this right now has to handle. You have to.
Yeah, and I in the science classroom too, I'm really trying to make sure that I take care of that. You know, in the science of emotions is something that's important to talk about too. And so in my welcome, I like to talk about, like, you know, just like, things are weird. Things are weird. It's really weird. It's okay to feel that, and let's do our best with it. You know, but it's you've got to at least think about that social emotional climate that's in that room at that moment, and you got to work with it.
Kind of be more than just somebody who's facilitating information sharing or setting things up for projects for students to do. It's more about, where are they at? Where are you at? Meet together as humans occupying the same space, trying to survive in a very difficult time. And if you get to that and you go, great, I'm working with that, that's actually more important than anything else, because if you can start from that base, anything else you do from that, you've already gained their respect, and they see you as another human that's on their level. And I think that's a really important thing. I think there's a lot of anxiety now over curriculum. We've seen it. We see just today, we're talking about 2 teachers that we saw that are anxious, not about that, they're anxious about their curriculum. They've been for the past 3 weeks, but they've also been anxious about students, new standards for how they're going to be grading or what they're going to be teaching, because maybe their cohorts are doing something different, or everyone's going their own ways. And, you know, what am I going to do? I can't do this. I can't do that now. That means they have to touch this. They can't share that. They can't share this. And it just becomes, you know, you're working basically with one arm tied behind your back and the other one, you know, somewhat moving towards the back. But you've worked, you know, you've developed things from the ground up. So you're going to work from that. You might not go so far off the ground, but you're moving somewhat. So you can have somewhat of a lesson, and you can have some sort of mediocrity or something that can relate you back to what you've done previous years. I think that's a big thing.
And every ed tech, every teacher, everyone that's in front of children needs to remember that they are they're the role model. Yeah. And so your reaction to stressors is going to have an effect on those students in front of you.
Yeah.
And so when new things happen, if you go, oh my God, I can't believe it, these people are asking me to do these things, I can't, absorbing that, you know, into themselves. Or if you go, you know what, things are difficult, we're going to make the most of it, they take that in as well, and it might help them build some resilience for what the world has to offer them when they're out on their own. And I think that's a huge thing that we got to remember.
Resilience is also that same thing with digital, like their digital lives and stuff like that, and maybe cyberbullying. Talk about being resilient for everything. Be resilient online.
Yes.
Don't step down. but also realize you're gonna see some things, hear some things, whatever that are horrible words or something like that, or someone posts photos, stuff like that. You're gonna see stuff. It's just go with it. You have to go with it, and you do your own filtering basically. So
you got to be,
you
and you have to right, and you got to develop the ability to critically think about what it is you're looking at, and make good decisions regarding your input. And it's, like garbage in, garbage out. So if you're just taking in this terrible information all the time, you're processing it, whatever you're doing is probably not very awesome as well. You got to be able to sift through it, figure out what's good, keep it going. But
we've had the anxiety over curriculum. We've already seen teachers talking about that. We've seen teachers talk about the anxiety over new standards of grading and what is expected of them, because years past, certain standards they might have to meet. Now maybe participation, and they don't even know what that's gonna look like, because if they lower their standards, then they're feeling like, well, I'm not really doing what I wanted to do. It almost feels like that. I've heard some people say the hygiene and PPE, the fact that everything's going to look different, and there's certain standards that we have to meet for that now that are much different and they've overlooked in the past. And that's going to be a huge thing that kind of like overarches everything. And hopefully that's going to be the most important thing. Everything else is secondary. If you don't get that lesson out, but you made sure no one took their mask off or gone in everyone's space or tried to sip off someone else's juice box. I mean, that's more important than talking about whatever you had to do in social studies. I mean, it's really about keeping children alive and safe, and that's for something that you don't even know that's there.
And that's something that we've got to, as educators, we have to each instill. We have to make it so that it's boring, like the stop, drop, and roll, and fire escapes. And why are we going to do a fire drill? Why do we going to do that? Like, at this point, it's so boring to do it. But the reason is like, we've got to make it so that it's natural, so that when that alarm goes off, you know what to do. And it's sort of the same thing. Like, we got to talk about this day 1 with our students. We got to talk about it, day 10 with our students, because we got to make this natural. You keep the mask over your face. You keep your distance if you can. Like, there's reasons behind these rules. It's not just some made up stuff that we've done to make your life difficult. This is real science-based solutions to existing in a society that needs social contact in order to do its duty. And our duty is to educate. Our duty requires social contact. So this is what we got to do to make it work. And that's, it's a hard thing to do, break that down so a first grader can understand it, and like,
that's the thing.
And
all
so, but that's what I do for a job. That's what I do, and I can do that. And I look forward to it, and I can't wait to do that. But like, it's a special breed that does that. But that's, it is a big, important thing to do, because they're like you mentioned, they're probably not getting it at home.
Yeah, I know.
They might be getting it at home, but like, you can't assume that they are.
Yeah, you can't. The last thing I see a lot of teachers talking about is the protocols of what they have to go through, the new protocols of when students have to be moved around, the timelines. We have shortened classes now, and the fact that lunch is going to be different. Everything's going to be different. It's going to be, I mean, just that alone, if nothing changed, there was no virus, there was no pandemic whatsoever, and we just changed our timelines, this year would still be rocky, for a while. But everything has changed. There's so many variables changed that it's, if I'm still and I don't hear someone screaming or crying, I'm gonna feel like that's great. We're winning. Okay, great. Because it feels like in any moment things could just completely fall apart.
Yeah.
And there's probably gonna be more students outside than they're gonna be inside the school at any one moment. That's another thing too. And it's to get me but
that's an interesting concept. Yeah. There's gonna be more at home. Yeah. Could happen.
Well, not just at home, but like physically outside the school, being outside because that was one of the things they wanted teachers to go say, go outside.
Right.
And somebody's just like, I'm going to go outside too. And I'm going to go outside. I'm like, wow, there's probably going to be less people in the school. The school probably inside will be safer potentially than outside being downwind of so many different people.
In our school, yes, because we are lucky to have a school that was built in modern times, 2009, and we actually have ventilation. And there are a lot of schools out there, perhaps people listening here, that know the plight of these old schools with these lacking ventilation systems. And I hope that this at least sends a signal that, hey, maybe the air that we breathe is kind of important, you know, and let's do that. But
definitely as teachers, we're also going to be keeping, going back to psychological aspect of things, keeping our emotional issues at the door. And that's one of the big things. I mean, we already get that. We've known that for, you know, first thing you learn, be a teacher. Hey, don't bring your stuff into the classroom. You have to turn into this completely different performance being and keep your stuff at home. And it's going to be a lot harder now because maybe there's protocols happening at home that are going to affect how, you know, you come into school in the morning.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that you might be preparing for what you have to do at school. Maybe there's a different lesson and it's a different way you're going to prepare for it. And that's the stress of that. And, oh, wait a minute, I forgot that in this lesson I need to do this. Wait a minute, it can't work now because it's breaking bubbles and da-da-da. And that's going to be par for the course. It's just going to be like, watch the plans fall down in flames and get ready to rebuild them with the structure that's left.
That's right. Especially for us, because it's, you know, one class and then boom, 10 minutes later, another class. And it's like
completely different grade, mindset.
Yeah. It might be a different even lesson plan, you know, they might be on a different roadmap. And all of a sudden, boom, you got to switch it up. And that's where we keep talking about it. But you've got to be a performer in this gig. You got to be a performer because that's what your job is. But
my last big thing is the procedures. And this can create a lot of anxiety for those, the post-school cleaning procedure. So mine currently is, I have whatever masks I might wear during the day. I have a dirty mask bin that I put these in, close it, end of the week, and I do have enough masks to last for an entire week. All of these get washed and I hang them up and I dry them. Here's my clean mask bin, already get some in it. And the week's done and I still have extra masks, which is great because I have things I might have to do on the weekend. But that's my procedure. I get home, clothes come off, in the shower I go, those clothes are going to be washed. I make sure everything is cleaned and then I can go from whatever I have to do after school instantly into that without carrying the school's environment home.
Yes, absolutely.
And then thinking about interacting with family and how that might be changing during this thing, because, you know, maybe it might be somebody maybe outside your household. If you don't do the same thing I do, could be you're like, oh, do they have the same procedure? Do I trust them? Are they the same hygiene? Are they as clean as I am? And then that's that issue, and that creates some anxiety too. So you're getting both sides at school and the home environment are going to be these like, what's going on? And I think that can create, you know, you have to kind of like get these procedures down and create these, I don't know, it's almost like when someone mentions you have a sort of like a nervous tick or something like that. And you constantly do that, or you have to touch something and it's this compulsive thing. You kind of have to build this compulsive behavior in of quickly go for the hand sanitizer, wash hands a different way than I'm used to, do everything with just a little more compulsive and get used to doing it without thinking about it, because this is going to be the new norm, probably
for at least the next few months.
Yeah.
If
not longer, because we know the strain's going to mutate and it's going to turn into something else. And
so that's what I like to explain to people. It's at least through the winter, and here in Maine, our winters are long. Yes. So we are heading
right now.
We are heading in. We are in fall at this point. We're in the beginning of fall. The weather has turned. I don't know about an Indian summer, perhaps, like Indian summer where, it gets warmer again. It's been 80 in the last week, but it's also been like 55. So it's, something we got to think about. But yeah, so we got to do our best. And, well, I can't wait till next week when we talk about what it's been like for a week with students in the building. So
stress.
For those listeners,
shaking a little bit.
For those watchers, we'll see you next week when we talk about what it's like with at least 150 children coming in and out of your classroom, and the stress of dealing with the ages of 5 through 13 in a week. Yeah.
And I'm hoping too, we're in season 3, and one point, I believe in season 2, maybe even the end of season 1, we had 2 guests.
That's right.
I'm hoping this season we have a few more guests.
Definitely.
And some adult guests, so that we can talk to some other teachers maybe that teach in the same district we teach in, or another district that have gone through this, and what their thoughts are about this. And it'd be nice to hear from another thing. Plus, we could probably have 100 guests. I think Zoom can handle all that. And that seems to work. I think it'd be great. I think they might like our format, possibly. If you're watching this right now and you're like, wait a minute, I don't like the way that show works. I don't want to be your guest. Hey, please, I'll make you a mask.
I have Grumpy Cat.
Yeah,
so,
Grumpy Cat's dead. That makes me depressed.
I know. I got to keep the memory alive.
Tartar sauce.
So, tartar. Yeah. So let's if you're listening, and especially if you're an educator, I really want to know, let's talk about these low-key skills that we need for this specific time in history. Let's share these COVID only things, in a forum where people can talk about such things, and let's share experiences and learn from each other, and do our best to help kids. And next time we see you, we will be in the midst of it. So
we'll be more germed, but we're going to create these protocols for ourselves.
Right.
Well, I'm Mr. James.
Right. And I'm Mr. Ritchie.
And we are the educators. And we're going to educate ourselves through the next week, and hopefully we'll see you then.
Hopefully.
See you later.